Hello and welcome to the first episode of Worst Albums Ever, a very creative title for a show where I find the worst album of all time. I'm starting by looking at the bottom 50 Rate Your Music albums and going through them one by one and determining which one is the worst. You may be thinking, this is exactly like I Hate Everything Search for the Worst, and yeah, it's just a rip off of that. Today we're going to start off with Scream by Tokio Hotel, which is the English translation of the album. I'm not going to try to pronounce the actual word for it, but this is a pop rock album, and as we all know, pop rock, specifically emo rock around 2003 to 2010, is not the most inventive genre. There's a lot of flaws, and a lot of bands kind of sound the same. Sum 41, Blink 182, and the Offspring's later work, while all those bands are kind of generic and similar, they did have something to offer, even if it was something very little, and there was something very little did make them a little bit different from the rest. Paramore had their more rebellious approach to it, which also with Haley's vocals made them stand out. Fall Out Boy had style and personality that made them stand out. Green Day was slightly more ambitious and came before most of the other bands, so that made them stand out. Tokyo Hotel, at least on this album, have nothing at all to offer. Let me get into some of the tracks and describe why I think that. So this opening track begins with the most generic pop rock riff I probably have heard in my entire life. It's also followed by DJ scratches of all things. I don't know why they made the conscious decision to put DJ scratches of all things in there, but, well, yeah, sounds cool, I guess. It's got really boring generic emo pop rock vocals. Um, you if you've heard any fucking pop rock, Sum 41 or Blink 182, if you've heard any of those vocalists, you already know what the vocalist of this band sounds like. Um, it's pretty much the definition of generic emo pop rock. This is the peak of it. The lyrics, the lyrics are like "Scream, are you yourself?" Fucking shit like that. It's just so generic and boring. It hurts. And we're only one song into this, and I'm already fucking bored. It sounds like Avenged Sevenfold, but somehow more generic and worse. Like Avenged Sevenfold are pretty fucking boring, but even then, they still sound more ahead of the curve than this fucking band do. It's then followed by an acoustic. The first track is followed by an acoustic song, which is, the second song is a weird place to have an acoustic song. It's not really something I'd expect an album to have. Like, usually the acoustic songs go towards the bottom of the album. Usually albums like this start off like, guns blazing, fast, heavy, and then it gets some more emotional, acoustic, slower tracks at the end. But Tokyo Hotel seem to be very avant-garde here, and have put that acoustic track second instead of at the bottom, which is a shitty fucking move because it just ruins the flow of the album, and it's such a weird shift of mood that it kind of just is really jarring and is not really, it doesn't have any flow to it. Which is something that carries on with the rest of the album. Believe me, it is not just this song. It's so boring, this song. This song is so fucking boring. It's like it's set out to be the most meh thing ever. Like, it's just kind of something that's playing. Like, I'm not even feeling getting into it. I'm not even really, immersed in it or anything. It's kind of just there. There's so much emo buzzwords here. It's like they looked up the emo dictionary and then they just like got every definition, pointed to one that sounded cool. It was like, how can we fit this into the song? Like listen to this shit. All the words that are in the song: abyss, storm, rain, promises, end of time, we will run together, everything will be fine. It's like they've just pulled up like every emo song ever and have just looked at all the cliches and everything and have just like grabbed them all and just merged them into one song. There's nothing unique about this at all. The next song has kind of a hard riff with pounding drums. It's exactly like the first song. Once again, there's no fucking flow to it. It's gone from a fucking hard, energetic song to an acoustic, slow, emotional song to a fucking hard, energetic song again. Albums have to have flow. Like, you can't just throw a bunch of songs together and expect it to stick. Like, you have to have structure to your album. You have to sequence it properly. But Tokio Hotel obviously didn't get the fucking memo here because they've just thrown everything together with no thought about how it will flow. It's another really cookie cutter emo pop song about living in the moment, which, we all haven't heard in an emo song before, have we? There's another slow song. Oh my god, it's bad. They just threw this shit together, like, honestly. I'm really struggling to find shit to talk about because it's just so fucking boring. Like, there's nothing to talk about. There's just nothing interesting about this. It's got a picking riff, this one, It's one of the better songs of the album. That's still not saying much, like, it's still pretty fucking shit. This next track, is kind of a 2005-esque radio pop, punk pop kind of anthem thing. I don't mind those, actually, like the Anthem by Good Charlotte, American Idiot by Green Day, one of those songs that they just overplay on the radio, and they play at, like, parties and stuff to get you, pumped and rebellious, and, one of those songs. Yeah, it's just, this album is just cliche after cliche after cliche, like, there's really nothing to it that's interesting or new at all. It's this rebellious song about, I'm not friends with you, I hate you, fuck you, kind of song. It's just something that's kind of there. Look, you already know what I'm gonna fucking say about this song. It's the fucking same as every other pop rock song about around this time. You already know my criticism for this song before I've even started talking about the song. I probably would have dug this band like 5 years ago. I'm not even gonna fucking lie. It's more painful to try and talk about it than it is to listen. Like, listening to it is a ride, is definitely a challenge. But talking about it is even worse because what is there to fucking talk about? I'm just gonna skip to the final track. You know what my criticisms are for all of those songs. They're just cliches. But the 12th and final track is not a strong closer at all. In fact, it is a fucking abysmal closer. It doesn't really tie anything together like most closers on albums should do. Like, the album, the closer should be, it should fit the mood of the album. It should be the last thing you want your audience to hear. It's got to have the most impactful, whatever, because it's the last thing your audience is going to hear on the album. It's got to be something that sticks with them, that keeps them coming back. But this doesn't even fit in with the fucking album. It just doesn't fit. I don't know why it doesn't. It just doesn't fit. Like, it doesn't have the same mood the rest of the album has. Why is this the closer? Yeah, these tracks are just a bunch of singles thrown together. This album has no structure, it has no theme, it has no sound it wants to go for. It is just a bunch of shit thrown together so they could market it at depressed teenagers. It is boring and generic, but it's not, like, painful to listen to, It's still, like, somewhat bearable. Like, I can have this on in the background and I wouldn't even really care. I have heard a lot worse. This is not the worst thing I have ever heard by a long shot. There are bands like Avenged Sevenfold, as I mentioned before, who have a lot of songs that aren't really different from this. I can imagine a lot of people liking this band, actually. I probably would have liked this a couple years ago myself. A lot of people would eat this shit up. And looking at YouTube videos and, comments and stuff, they have a lot of fans. And, it's harmless. This music is harmless. While it is boring and something I don't want to listen to, it's harmless. There's nothing wrong with liking this band. I don't doubt there are worse albums coming up. This isn't anywhere near good, but it's passable as music, and, as long as they're just doing stuff that, they like doing and people are enjoying it, then what's the problem with it? You can hear pretty similar albums on the Billboard charts. It's just this genre has grown to be so outdated that it's harder to listen to this than most generic electropop